I usually don't ask this early, but if you could like the video and subscribe, it would mean a lot. We're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your support can really help get my content out there. Thanks. Hey everyone, Liam here. I've been through a lot lately, and I thought sharing my story might help someone else out there, especially if you're going through a rough time in your relationship. This is the story of how I caught my wife cheating at a winter riding workshop in Tasmania and how I dealt with it. Buckle up, because it's a long one. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Liam Reynolds, a 38-year-old marketing manager from Melbourne, Australia. I've been with my wife, Isabella, for 12 years, and we've had what I thought was a strong marriage. We've always been the kind of couple that communicates well, or so I believed. Isabella, who's 36, is a writer. She's published a couple of short stories, a few articles, and has been working on a novel for what feels like forever. Writing is her passion, her escape from the mundane. For years, I supported her in this dream. She would lock herself in her office for hours, writing, reading, editing, and I'd be there with cups of coffee, reading her drafts, even when they didn't make sense. Honestly, I thought we were in a good place, but as they say, life can turn upside down when you least expect it. The beginning of doubts. Everything started one winter evening in late June. Isabella came home excited, her cheeks flushed from the cold Melbourne wind. She told me about this writing workshop she wanted to attend. It was a prestigious event held in Tasmania during winter, something about the isolated, cold environment inspiring creativity. She made it sound so innocent. She even showed me the website, the guest speakers, and some of the workshops they'd be offering. One name stood out to her. Tom Harrington, a 42-year-old best-selling novelist from Sydney. I had heard of him before. He had this rugged reputation. A literary bad boy who loved to break rules both in life and on the page. I didn't think much of it at first. Isabella admired many writers, but I noticed the way her face lit up when she talked about Tom. Still, I trusted her. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. The workshop was 2 weeks long and it was pricey. We weren't struggling financially, but it was a considerable amount of money. Despite the cost, I told her to go for it. After all, it's not like she went to workshops all the time, and this one sounded like a big deal. The workshop begins. A week before the workshop, things started to feel different. It wasn't something obvious, but I noticed that Isabella was more distant, more distracted. She wasn't as affectionate, and our conversations felt forced. When I brought it up, she shrugged it off, saying it was just stress about the upcoming workshop and her novel. That seemed reasonable, so I didn't press further. The day she left for Tasmania, I drove her to the airport. She kissed me goodbye, telling me she'd miss me, but something felt off. Call it intuition, call it gut instinct, but that's when the first real pang of doubt hit me. As I drove back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But I didn't want to be that insecure, controlling husband. So I buried it. For now. The first week. The first few days of the workshop seemed normal. Isabella sent me texts about the writing exercises they were doing, the cold but beautiful Tasmanian landscape, and how the group was bonding over late-night discussions about literature by the fire. She also mentioned Tom a lot. At first, it was in passing. Tom said this amazing thing today, or Tom's giving me feedback on my draft. I figured she was just impressed by his talent. He was, after all, the keynote speaker at the workshop. But by the middle of the first week, her texts became shorter and our calls less frequent. When I did manage to get her on the phone, she was distracted, her voice distant. I started to worry, but again, I pushed it aside. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just deeply engrossed in her writing, or the workshop schedule was more demanding than she'd expected. Still, something about the way she mentioned Tom and how her enthusiasm for the workshop seemed to revolve more around him than the actual writing made me uneasy. By the end of the first week, things took a turn. She stopped texting me goodnight like she usually did. And when I called, she'd either not answer or give me some vague excuse about being tired or in the middle of something with the group. I could sense she was lying. The disconnect between us felt like it had widened into a chasm. That's when my gut instinct really kicked in. I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was going on. I talked to my best mate, Josh, about it, and he told me straight up, "Mate, if you think something's wrong, Azrania, we need to find out." I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be the guy who suspects his wife of cheating without proof. But the doubts were eating me alive, and I knew I couldn't just ignore it. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. The private investigator. I got in touch with Ben, a P I recommended to me by a friend of a friend. Ben was the real deal, former cop, sharp as a tack, and discreet. He told me he'd fly out to Tasmania and keep tabs on Isabella for a few days, just to see if anything suspicious was going on. Those were some of the longest days of my life. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was going to be Ben with some horrible news. My mind kept going to dark places, imagining all the worst-case scenarios. Then, 4 days later, I got the call. "Liam, mate, I'm going to send you something, but I've got to warn you, it's not good." My heart sank as I waited for the photos to come through. When they did, I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. There they were, Isabella and Tom, walking hand in hand through the workshop grounds, sneaking off to a secluded cabin late at night. The look on her face was one I hadn't seen in years: excitement, passion, joy. And it wasn't for me. Confronting the truth. I stared at the photos for hours, disbelief turning to rage, then sadness, then something else entirely. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we'd built together? But I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. I needed to plan this out. I wasn't going to let my emotions get the better of me. Ben kept me updated, sending more photos and details over the next few days. It was the same pattern. They'd meet up late at night, away from the group, and spend hours together in that cabin. Sometimes they'd go for long walks along the misty cliffs, their bodies close, the kind of intimacy that had clearly developed over time. By the time Isabella returned home, I had all the evidence I needed. I could feel the tension as soon as she walked through the door. She tried to act normal, hugging me, telling me she missed me, handing me a souvenir, a leather-bound notebook of all things. The irony wasn't lost on me. The confrontation. I waited a day before I confronted her. I wanted to give myself time to cool off, to think things through. Then that evening, I asked her to sit down. I could see the worry in her eyes, the way she avoided looking directly at me. "Isabella," I began, "I know about Tom." Her face went pale, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She tried to deny it, stammering about how Tom was just a mentor, that I was overreacting. But then I showed her the photos. I laid everything out, the late-night meetings, the secret walks, the hours spent in that cabin. Her face crumpled and she started crying, begging for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake, that she hadn't meant for it to happen. She told me she loved me, that she'd do anything to fix this. But it was too late. The damage was done. I told her I needed time to think, and for the next few days I barely spoke to her. I didn't know what to do, didn't know if I could ever trust her again. Revenge and resolution. After a week of silence, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. Instead of just walking away, I gave her an ultimatum. Either she comes clean to our friends and family, or I would. I wanted her to face the consequences of what she'd done. She thought I was bluffing, but she was wrong. When she refused to come clean, I took matters into my own hands. I called up our closest friends, my family, even her parents, and I told them the truth. I didn't sugarcoat it. I laid out the facts. She had an affair with a man she met at the workshop. and I had the evidence to prove it. The fallout was immediate. Our friends were shocked, her parents were devastated, and Isabella, well, she was furious at first. But eventually she realized that she had no one to blame but herself. She had destroyed our marriage, and now she had to live with the consequences. The aftermath. In the months that followed, we separated. Isabella moved out, and I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But in the end, I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me so deeply. As for Tom, I don't know what happened to him. After the workshop ended, he disappeared from Isabella's life, as far as I know. Maybe he moved on to the next writing retreat, the next woman. It didn't matter. He wasn't my problem. What I did learn from this whole experience, though, was that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on. I didn't need to ruin her life or make her suffer. The knowledge that she had lost me and the life we'd built together was enough. And that's my story. It wasn't easy to go through, and it's not easy to share, but I hope it resonates with someone out there. If you're going through something similar, just remember, you deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect. And if you're not getting that, then it might be time to move on. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of this long story. What would you have done in my shoes? How would you have handled the betrayal? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay strong, and until next time.